Hey, thanks for coming to our demo today of AutoElevate by CyberFOX. So, I want to set the stage really quick, talk a little bit about what we're doing and what we're solving for. So, today we're going to run you through a quick product demonstration. That demonstration is going to cover two foundational layers of security. The first one's going to be elevation, so working with privilege requests, answering those requests, or setting up policies for those, and how the different use cases might play out when we need to provide privilege. But ideally, we don't want to give out those credentials. And of course, we don't want everybody to be local admin. So how do we pull local admin back and then ultimately deliver a great experience while safely delivering elevations and privilege requests when we need to? The other part is going to be, again, part of that foundational layer of security is going to be some basic blocking and tackling. So we're going to talk a little bit about what Blocker does, how it works, and how it can help us provide this extra proactive layer of security. So let's get started. So we're going to start with the basics. We're going to take a look at a particular computer. This is an agent-based technology, so agent's going to be installed on the endpoint so we can control elevation locally and do a little bit of blocking locally as well. So a couple key things, that we want to report on would be things like where UAC is. Now, this part of this is a UAC intercept, so we want to make sure that UAC is turned up and exactly where it needs to be. This is pretty good. On Max is pretty good too. I want to be able to see who's logged in. So if we do a quick refresh, look at that. I'm logged in to my machine up here, and you can see I am a standard user. In addition, we can also see things like this. So you can see who's a member of the local administrators group. Because one very cool feature that we have that also helps us is to remove local admin rights. So we can take any active user account that's in the local admin group and we can boot that guy right out of there. And that helps us to, at least in the first wave, to get rid of some of the folks that have local admin abilities. We want to get them dropped down to standard user. This is going to help us get there. Of course, you always want to make a sweep through all of your domain groups or Azure AD permissions and make sure that we're not giving people admin in those places. But, this is a great, great first step. So from there, the agent, what it's going to do is it's going to collect UAC events. So actually in the background, it's doing two things. It's actually collecting UAC events, and our blocker tool is going to start building some recommendations. So it's going to be looking at things that it could potentially block to kind of proactively help out with security a little bit. So we're going to be capturing those events, and we're going to be evaluating all at the same time. So let's take a look at what some of those events might be. So this is a great example. Let's go and switch this to vendor. Let's see what's been coming in. So now I got a pretty good picture of what applications are being requested or potentially what settings people might be trying to change. Basically anything that could trip a UAC event, we're going to go ahead and capture every time that comes up. And then we can get a good idea of is it that we need to make some rules and policies for. So remember, there's two sides to AutoElevate from an elevation standpoint. There are things that we could provide just in time if we need to. And then we can do policy based so that I don't need to be there and the system can just handle it all on its own. So now let's look at creating one of those policies. So we're going to work through some of those use cases with you today. We're going to go through creating some policy and what that might look like. And then we're going to go through, well, what happens when people do random things that I wasn't expecting them to do, which our end users are always surprising us with. So let's start with creating a policy. So now we've got a few different events. I've got some vendor details and information. These, by the way, as you saw earlier, these are data views. You can change these views up. So depending on what I want to see and how I want to see it, it allows me to really sort and organize these screens in any way that makes the most sense for me for what I'm looking for. So in this case, I'm going to use one of these events as the foundation for a new rule, and that rule is going to cover Oracle. So let's cover Java right here. So we've got Oracle up there. I've got a bunch of different Java updates going on. There's a whole bunch of versions out here. Looks like a bunch of folks are trying to do it. So let's go ahead and create a policy for that. So we're going to start here. action. Let's just convert that right to a rule. Now, at the very top, it's telling us what they're asking to try and do. So what program is asking for elevation? Essentially, what am I going to be either granting or denying? So it really just depends on what they're asking for, whether or not I want to allow or not allow that to happen. Now, we can start with things as targeted as like file hashes. So maybe I want to keep you locked into that version. That's the only thing I want you to do. Then I may lock you into a file hash, for example. Some other things I can do, I could add additional attributes here, or maybe I want to allow you to do this kind of update, or maybe as long as it's already here and we're just doing an update, we're not installing fresh, lots of different options. We can also go down to and validate that, in this case, it was actually published. And as you can see, the request system is working. We got some requests coming in, so that's pretty cool. Now, if we were to say allow list a vendor, right? And we might do it in a couple different ways. I could use the actual certificate hash, and that would keep us locked into this one cert that Oracle's been using. Or I could expand that a little bit and maybe kind of say, well, look, as long as these things match, then I don't really care which certificate necessarily. I noticed I had a bunch of Oracle events in there. I noticed they're under different certificates. So you know what? Let's just make one rule to rule them all. We're just going to do it that way. And then I can further narrow the scope of that approval, right? Because this would just allow the whole vendor of Oracle, anything signed by them. So that might be a little too much. So let's chill that out a little bit, and let's maybe do something focused, specifically targeted, I'll say, at Oracle, and specifically the Java platform. And then we're just saying, well, we're going to approve that. Maybe we're going to deny it. Maybe I want to keep you off changing to a newer version. And then what kind of an elevation? Now, this is something kind of unique to us where there is, in some scenarios, there's context that needs to be taken into consideration when we're doing an elevation. Most times, sure, we can get away with just doing a regular old, over the shoulder. I put my creds in, you go ahead and do what you got to do, and we walk away. We all part company, everybody's happy, right? Sometimes whether it's software installed deep in someone's profile, we're touching map drives, or we're contextually sensitive, like the registry, for example. Well, in those situations, I really might need the user to be the admin. And well, we all kind of know what a pain that is to do. So we can do that simply and easily for you. Most times, though, admin's going to work just fine. Now we got a level. So where is this rule going to apply? Do I have a bunch of folks that need to use this or just some folks that need to use it? I can decide if I want to place this rule at a global level, or, we can start to break it down into different tiers. This is a multi-tenant system. So whether you're a single entity using this, like an internal IT department, or you're more of a managed services group where you have multiple companies, honestly, it works the same either way. All right, and that's basic rule creation. So that's how we put policies together, and when we're all done, those rules are going to show up right here so we can see exactly what we're allowing. We follow a really nice, I highly recommend this, follow a really nice naming convention. So it's very easy to identify what these rules do, what they're here for, exactly what we're doing, and I don't have to open anything up and sort of dig around for data. Now that is one particular use case. And the other one, that's going to involve me going over to my PC over here, my cloud PC, and talking through some typical kind of day-to-day workflows, how they might work, how would we do it, what would we do, what is it going to look like. A lot of people very concerned with the end user experience, right? So there's nothing more frustrating when we really clamp down on security and then we take away everybody's admin rights, and then this silly box called UAC comes up and nobody knows what to do. Or they try to type their account in there 15 times, they lock their account out, or now they're calling you every 5 minutes. They're like, hey, this box is here. I need your password. Help me out. And that's usually when they start yelling and say, give me back my admin rights. So we're going to walk you through the experience. And we've done this, we've tailored and customized this to create an end user experience that we feel like people can relate to, they can understand, they can get a little less frustrated at. Now, again, this is all customizable, what I'm going to show you. So let's take a look. So let's start with something basic. I've gone out, I got this really cool text edit program that I like to use at home. I'm going to go ahead and install this program as many of us would try to do, except this time AutoElevate is going to get in the way. So now we've dismissed that UAC prompt. We know what they're asking for, and now we have the option to submit that for review. And you saw Tina's come in just a little bit ago. That's kind of what it looks like on the back side, right? When somebody clicks this yes button, that request pops in there. Now, we again tailored this and customized this to create this experience. We want to let people know what's happening. First, what did you do? Hey, this requires some admin. And then the scary bit, right? So, hey, we're going to send this to the cybersecurity team. Are you okay with that? We're going to review this against, your organization's security policy. And so now at that point, if you are doing something you probably shouldn't be doing, most people would take the time to exit right now. But let's say they're persistent. So there is my request on the desktops popped up, said, hey, somebody's waiting. We've got a timer. We have set it short for the demo. And then, of course, we've customized this message. What's happening to them right now? We're walking them every step of the way. Looks like our time ran out. Look at that. We got a ticket created. We do have integrations into a bunch of PSA tools. So let's go take a look at this in the actual portal. So let's go over here. I'm going to go to our elevation requests, and let's find easy. Look at that. Pending right there. So that was easy. Now, we know it's pending. We know who it's for. We know where they're located at. I know who's asking me. I know that guy. So let's go take a look. So now I'm looking at who they are, where they're coming from. I know what you're asking for. I can see all the details around the software over here. I don't like this. Look at this, not certified app. A lot of custom off-the-shelf software like that really should be, most of the stuff we want to do should be signed. I understand, a lot of times, unless it's like a custom written app for line of business or something like that, sometimes it won't. But, if you're just downloading random stuff off the internet, you're probably going to want to make sure it's signed. You know what? I don't like this. I'm going to deny it. I'm just going to tell them no. Now I can make this a rule. So if I didn't want anybody to do this anywhere, I could do that. But right now we're just going to say, hey, we're just going to say one time hold off. Until I get some more info, I'm going to have to go with no. Now we can do a little bit of research here too. So you can see there's a little X there and a little yellow X right here. So this wasn't verified. That's kind of problem number one. We can go visit virus totals. So we're going to give you this. You can do this in a rule too, right? So the hashes are always highlighted. So when you see those, you can click on them. It'll take you out here to virus totals. You can actually check it out. All right, now let's go back over here. So, that doesn't look good, and it's not certified, it's not validated, file's not signed. So overall, it's an old program too. Like this is ancient. So you know what? I'm good. I'm glad I said no. Now, what is that? What happens to, at the end user side of things? What are they going to see? Let's go over there, take a look. Yep. And again, we're going to communicate with them, let them know what happened. Sorry, I know, scary team, those guys, piece of work, telling you. But hey, they've said no. And that's the end of the story for those guys. Like, that's it. I've said no. Now, if I can make a rule for that, if I wanted to, it would always say no. Well, let's shift gears. Let's say, well, most of the time, I may probably say yes, especially when I know what they're doing and I trust it and the files and everything look okay. If I say yes, what happens then? And so let's do that. So in this case, we're going to make a mistake. Again, we are going to take over the UAC dialog, and we're going to give them our security warning. You sure you want to do it? Of course, they're pretty persistent sometimes, so they're going to say yes. We got our timer. Now here's what I'm going to do. I got 15 seconds. I can do this. I'm going to go to my phone. I have a new request pending. It's green across the board. Approve this request. Now I just did a one-time approval. I did it on my cell phone. So that's how quick this has the ability to respond. So the moment that I said yeah, it immediately responded on the desktop. So when that timer's running, it leaves that connection open so we can communicate super fast with the desktop. Makes for great customer service. And so if we're going to deliver just-in-time service, fantastic way to do it. So we click OK, and it will do everything for me. Watch what happens. Watch that box close. There it is. You see that credential? So in the process of doing all of that, a whole bunch of stuff kind of happened in the background. That's where the secret sauce is a little bit. But safe to say that we are doing a just-in-time elevation with a double password rotation. So it is super, super safe and it's super fast. And we're not, most importantly, leaving a standing administrator account. Account goes up, elevates, and comes down immediately. So we're not leaving any standing admin accounts out there. And that's the important part. And then we can continue with whatever we were doing. That could be changing something in Windows, installing some software, doing an update, taking something out. Just depends on what you're doing. Now, what happens if we've already got a policy in place? Like, I don't want to interact with this thing all the time. If I set the rules, I just want it to go. So we were working on that Java rule there a little bit earlier. So let's go ahead and run that installer. So now, no dialogues, credentials, installer. So, and again, this could be for any, I could be changing settings in Windows, it doesn't really matter. And that's what it looks like basically to them, aside from the little flashy bit on the screen there. Application just runs. So if you have applications that require admin, if you've got applications won't work without administrator, applications that constantly have to update, what are some of those examples? So there's UPS WorldShip, there's QuickBooks, there's Sage, there's SolidWorks, there's Revit, and AutoCAD, and Bluebeam and Foxit and Adobe and a whole pile of other applications, Dentrix and you name it, it's out there. A lot of these things still require, they just won't work if you're not an administrator. This can help solve all those. Those updates that you get a lot solves that. Giving people admin rights back because they have to do this because you can't always be there in a timely fashion. This solves all that. What happens if they do something that we have explicitly said we do not want you to elevate? So let's look at that really quick. So if I try to think I'm a smart guy, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this PowerShell script that I've been working on. Then AutoElevate's going to step in and say, well, you're not exactly going to do that, right? And so if we have a deny policy in place, again, that's a different message. We can communicate in the most effective way possible, be as nice, as witty, as hilarious, as fun, or as stern as you want. Okay, now, what about if I'm an engineer? So we know this machine is pretty locked down, and I need to get on this machine and I need to do some technical work. What do we do for that? And so what we want to do is help you guys to get rid of the shared admin account process, right? So whether you're in the line of business of an MSP, or you're an internal IT, or you're a school, or a government office, or a private enterprise, it doesn't matter. IT is IT, and the problem is the same, right? So at some point, I have a lot of machines I need to work on, and I need an effective way to do that. And for most people, that's generally a shared admin account or some sort of shared admin process, which sharing admin accounts and passwords is never a good idea. Just that sentence alone makes us all kind of cringe a little bit. So we have what's called technician mode, which allows us to get rid of the shared admin account process. So what I've done is I've pulled up a little QR code that's part of AutoElevate. This is going to authenticate me. So I'm going to use my little QR reader on my app on my phone. I'm going to scan it. So just did that. And boom, technician mode right away. So it's great. So now as an engineer, I can do whatever I want, right? So let's say we want to go back, because we use command a lot, we use PowerShell a lot, right? So let's right click, run as an admin, which you just saw get blocked a minute ago. But now, as an engineer, we have the ability to go around that. So we're going to pause all those policies. When you're a tech, we don't want to get in your way. But make sure you have the ability to do what you need to do so you can get done quickly and efficiently. And all you have to do, no more copying, no more typing in passwords, no more copying and pasting passwords. Like we all know, like as soon as you copy a password, where does it go? Right to the clipboard. And is it encrypted in the clipboard? No, it's in plain text. So, we want to make sure we're not sharing any of that information. They're not sitting on our clipboard. Don't make it easy for them to get your stuff, basically. And so now all we have to do is simply click the button. And you can click that as much as you want. Now we are going to track it. So we know who's clicking the button. So we know you did it. We know what you did it for. We know when you did it, what system you were on, who was logged in, what process you elevated. It's all recorded for posterity. But now I am in here and I am elevated and I am in the context of an administrator. But like I mentioned before, sometimes you have to do stuff where context is important, like the registry. So now, again, neither one of us are administrators. I am not an admin in my organization, nor is my account that I'm logged into this PC with is not an administrator at all. But I can go and do this. And now I'm in as Bill Morgan. And so that allows me to, if I need to edit the right Hive, I've got the ability to do that, and I didn't have to make myself an admin and then log out and then log back into the session. There's a whole bunch of hoops you got to go through, and then you got to reverse that whole process when you're all done. And something as what took me about 5 seconds to do, it could take 15, 20, 30 minutes by the time you get it all done. So it can be a real challenge, but we make it super simple and easy. Now, that's the elevation side of things. And so I did mention, right, about we're going to do some basic blocking and tackling. So let's talk about that. So I'm going to turn this off now. By the way, there is a timer. A lot of folks are going to ask that. 15 minutes by default. You can alter that, but it will go away on its own. But since I'm done with it, it is good practice. Just click the button, shuts it right off. All the policies are right back on. So now let's talk about some basic, what I would call, again, blocking and tackling, a little bit of foundational security. What we're doing is we're just adding a proactive layer into the system to help protect you when people get super crafty and they're trying to do stuff that doesn't require elevation, right? And also might get around some EDRs and try to fool them. They are getting clever, these folks. And so that's what Blocker's for. Now, what it's going to do is this. So the first thing is evaluate the system. Figure out based on our curated list, right? That's an important distinction. So it's our curated list. So we've curated a list from a number of sources like Lolbass, of course, Microsoft has given us a list and said, well, these are actually just right in the documentation. So if you just read the documentation about WDAC, things like that, Microsoft will tell you, hey, these 40 some odd applications, if nothing's using them, you should block them or severely restrict their ability. Because a lot of the bad guys and girls use these tools and utilities to do bad things. And since a lot of these folks kind of take the path of least resistance, they'll sort of lease or buy this from somebody who wrote it, and then they'll just repackage it, send it off to you. So if we can just proactively close a few holes by blocking a few applications that, for the most part, shouldn't be being used anyways, unless you're a developer, um, like the ASP.NET compiler, bash.exe, bitsadmin, wscript, cscript. So there's a whole bunch, MS Build, like .NET. Like there's a bunch of programs that can be exploited that exist in Windows already legitimately and are generally just sitting around really kind of doing nothing as they should unless you're developing something. But the bad guys know how to use and exploit all of these. You should block them. And that's what we're going to recommend. So once you get those recommendations, then you add those blocking rules, it will start blocking those applications. And if anything tries to access them, we're going to stop it. And so as an example, I've put just a couple of rules in place just to show you what it looks like. So we watched a lot of malware that we let loose in a sandbox to see what it would do. So a lot of like some common ones are rats, remote access Trojans. And so I kind of followed along. There was one called Revenge Rat that I don't know why I gravitated towards that, but I kind of followed what it was doing. And so I wrote a little script that imitated, because I can't let real malware loose in this environment, but I imitated what it was trying to do. And so let's take a look at that now. So if we go in here today, let's go look at our blocker events. So you can see I'm not actually in there yet today. So let's go create some events. So I'm going to run this program. And essentially we're simulating some of the utilities and tools and methods that this particular program was trying to use, but a lot of them use the same utilities and the same types of threat vectors to get into and wreak some havoc on a system. So you can kind of see right there, right? So we're trying to download a toolkit. We're trying to execute some scripts that, I'm assuming my program downloaded. I'm trying to, kick off some scripting tools that Windows has. And ultimately, most of this stuff failed. The browser got open. That's okay. Didn't do any harm there. But the real foothold stuff, the stuff that can cause damage, didn't, right, wasn't allowed to execute. And that's important because we tend to get a bit crazy with trying to block and control every application in Windows. That's, application whitelisting. There's something like 300,000 files and like 10,000 applications or some crazy high number like that in just a standard Windows build, regardless of what we do it after the fact. So you could try to control all of that, or there's a couple of hundred applications that if we can put a fence around those and block those applications, it takes an enormous amount of threat vectors off the table. So if we go back to our portal, we can actually see that right there. So there I am, blocked, and you can see the utilities that we're trying to use. Not only that, but you can see where they came from. So if something does show up out here, forensically, this is really nice. And again, you can sort and organize these screens any way you want. But like just the way that I have it organized, forensically, this is really nice because I can see, well, what process started this mess? And you notice it didn't require any elevation. It just went ahead and ran. We wrote it like that on purpose because that's what a lot of these malware-free attacks, living off of LAN attacks, are doing. So forensically, though, I can see, hey, who's running this? Where is it running? What were they trying to do? And of course, I can see that we blocked it. All right, so that's our demo for today. If you're interested in more, check us out at www.cyberfox.com.